Hello, my dears. It's Katie, and I'm here today to talk about genres. And when I say genres, there are some specific things that I really want to talk about. First, I want to talk about um, how, if you really try, you can find all of these different books that you would like in any genre. Like, you can find a book that you like in any genre if you really, really try and you really put the effort in. And then the second thing I want to talk about is genres are fake. And I'll probably end with that because I do want to talk about the first portion first because I have a lot more to say about that. But I kind of came to these realizations about both of these things fairly recently, and it kind of blew my mind, and I wanted to talk to people about it. So, first and foremost, the you can find a book in any genre if you really try thing that I was talking about. That came about for a couple of reasons. One, I was talking to a couple of people about magical realism in particular. Like, it was just a day of me talking to people about magical realism. And as you guys know, it's not a genre that I tend to enjoy. In many, many videos, I've said, I hate this genre. I won't touch it within a 10-foot pole. If I hear the words magical realism, I shut down and refuse to function. It's just a bad thing that I got into. So I was talking to these different booktubers about it, and it seems to just be a very polarizing genre from the get go. You either love it or you hate it. There's very little in between, it seems like, at least among the people that I talk to. One person was talking about how they DNF'd a magical realism book recently. Another person was talking about how they used to hate it and then they found a book and now they really enjoy it. And I was just like, you know what? I don't like it. I don't know why, but I don't like it. It just seems like every book that I've read in that genre has been bad, at least for me. I hated Of Love and Other Demons by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I literally hated that book. I also really did not like Kafka's Metamorphosis, and both of those are considered to be magical realism. And I just didn't like them. But whenever I go on Goodreads and I look at specific fantasies, and you can see the shelves on the side where a lot of people put things, there are some fantasy books that I'm very surprised that a lot of people classify as magical realism. So that made me want to reevaluate, and I kind of did a little bit of digging into like what is magical realism exactly, how does it work, etc. And I kind of stumbled across there is a big debate about who can write magical realism and just what it actually is because of a lot of different reasons that I probably won't go into because that's not what this video is about. But then a day or two later, after that conversation, I started reading The Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater. And you guys probably saw it in my wrap up, or maybe not because it's long, that I talked about this book and I alluded to the fact that I had something to talk about in relation to this book and I was going to do it at a later date. Well, today is that later date. The Scorpio Races is, depending on who you talk to, a fantasy novel with mythological retelling elements, but it kind of takes place in a more modern setting and it has these magical elements. And I was like, wait a second, is this magical realism? And then I started digging into it a little bit, and quite a few people say that this is magical realism. And I was like, okay, I'm really, really liking this book. This was before I did the digging. I was like, I'm really, really liking this book. Maybe I'm reconsidering my feelings on magical realism. And that got me thinking and that got me talking to people. And Vendi, who sent me this book, I talked to her a little bit about it too. And I was like, this might be getting me to reconsider my feelings and my stance on magical realism. And then it got me talking to another person, talking to Kara, and we were talking about how, in some ways, if you really put your mind to it and you really, really want to, you can find a book you like in every single genre. And I sat back and I thought about it for a second, and I was like, wow, you're completely right. Because I can literally name books that I like in every single genre. I could, except for magical realism for the most part. I'm sure there are other ones out there that I just haven't thought of, but I'm talking about like the major umbrellas. Like I can think of a book that can fit in pretty much every genre that I actually enjoyed. And if you guys are interested in that, I might do a follow-up video. But anyway, back to my story. So I read The Scorpio Races and I absolutely loved it. Like it ended up being one of my favorite books of last year. And that just completely blew my mind. I've been saying that I hate this genre for how long now? And then I read this and then it made me change my mind. So that made me realize that if you really try and you just go in with an open mind, or if you go in with little to no knowledge about what a specific book is about, you never know what you might find. You never know if your next favorite book is around the corner, because I didn't know that this was magical realism going in. I had no clue. Whereas with The Raven Cycle, I knew that there were magical realism elements in it, and that turned me off and made me not want to consider even picking it up. That and also urban fantasy, which I have a complicated relationship with. That's not to say I don't like any urban fantasy. It's just that it is a more difficult genre for me to like, or subgenre, I should say, because fantasy. But going into this blind, just thinking it was a straight up fantasy mythology retelling story that kind of takes place in like an Ireland-y setting, I was like, yeah, that sounds great. I'm really interested in that. I love horses. The plot sounds interesting. The blurb on the back is intriguing. I've heard good things about this. Let's go. And then I read it and I ended up loving it, and it ended up being what I thought was a genre that I hated. So it's getting me to reevaluate that and kind of giving me a different perspective on what genres actually are, and just going in with more of an open mind. Just, I normally, when I hear the words magical realism, I shut down. I tune out, I stop listening, because it is just, I have so many bad associations with that phrase, those words. But when I didn't know about it, and then I read it, a more modern take on it, I guess, and not in a school setting, I liked it. Or at least this one book. I can't say anything else because I haven't read anything else, because I haven't let myself read anything else. So, with that being said, just, I guess the takeaway from this discussion is there are so many people out there, and I've watched many people do the out of my comfort zone tag. And there's that one question that says, a genre that you will never ever pick up again because of X, Y, and Z, or whatever the question is. And a lot of people say that one genre. But the thing is if you try, you can find a genre that you like. If it's something, even if it's something that you typically don't like, if you just stumbled across it one day and picked it up thinking that it was something else, or gave it a try because it just sounded interesting enough, you never know what might happen. It might be something that you really enjoy. But then again, I know there are going to be the arguments out there that, life is short. We want to enjoy what we do. We want to enjoy what we read and whatnot. And I completely agree. But that's not to say that, it might not be a bad idea to give something a try every once in a while, just to see if there is something that you're interested in. And now I'm going on the flip side of everything and talking about how actually genres are fake. And yeah, it's like a complete 360. It's like, yeah, genres. You can find everything that you like in any of them if you really want. Yes, but they're also fake. And here's the flip side of that coin. A lot of literature and books are multi-genre. So I was in Oregon a couple of months ago with my friend, and we were talking about the series that I was reading called the Atlantis Grail series. You probably heard me talk about it from time to time on my channel. And I was like, how would you classify this as a genre? Like, what do you want to call this? And she's like, well, it's cross genre. But, then again, genres are fake. And I was just kind of stunned by that. I was like, wait, what? And then I thought about it and I'm like, wait, you're completely right. You are completely right that genres are fake because a book is telling a story about something and it might not fit into a given genre. So like for instance, the Atlantis Grail series, it's sci-fi, it's romance, it's dystopian kind of, it's end of the world shenanigans. And I'm just like, what do I classify this book as? And personally, I would personally classify it as sci-fi with a dash of romance or a heavy-handed secondary genre being romance, because I wouldn't personally specifically classify it as romance. For one reason or another, it just doesn't scream that genre to me. The sci-fi aspect is more than anything else. And I'm like, all right, cool. But then, once again, going back to the Scorpio races, I've talked to and read reviews about this book in multiple facets. And some people call this pure fantasy. And other people out there call it magical realism. And some people just call it a mythological retelling. And I'm like, after I've read it, I'm like, well, it's kind of all of those things wrapped up in one. It's not just one thing or another thing. It's all of those things in one. And that's what makes genres and age ranges, frankly, so complicated. Because it's like nothing fits in a little box. You guys know how I feel about little boxes and just kind of putting ourselves into specific categories and labels and just fitting the same cookie cutter mold as everyone else. We don't do that. We are all individuals. We are all unique. We all have something different to offer. We all have different experiences and different perspectives on things. We can't fit in a box. And it's the same thing with books. They don't fit in boxes. They don't conform to one thing or another. I mean, I can even make an argument. Realm of the Elderlings, for instance. Yes, it is primarily fantasy, but it's got a lot of historical aspects to it. It's got some religious aspects to it. It's got some folktale. It's got some romance. I mean, it's got everything you can possibly think about in some way, shape, or form. I mean, there's maybe even a tiny bit of sci-fi if you really squint and you look for it. But that's the thing. Like, why do we have genres? Why do we force books to conform to something? Because a story is a story, and it's really just all books are doing one common thing. They are telling a story, they're conveying information, a tale, something to a reader. They're all the same cover, pages, ink, ideas. Ideas is really what books boil down to. Someone gets an idea and they're like, hey, I should do something with this. I want to tell a story about this experience or this dream or this idea that I had. And they can do it in many different forms. And I'm like, okay, you can tell it verbally, you can tell it in written form, you can do it in a visual format like a movie or a TV show. But in essence, they're all telling a story, and they all fall into a category of a storytelling media. But we feel like we need to go further than that and put it in a little box. And that is wild. Like, why do we as a society feel the need to put everything into these neat, tiny little boxes and make everything fit? There are subgenres. And that even goes further. It's like a Matryoshka doll. You have the big, if you guys aren't familiar with those, they're the little Russian dolls where you have the nesting dolls. It's like the big doll that has another smaller doll inside that has another smaller one until you get down to like the super minuscule one that's about this big. Yeah. That's kind of how I'm feeling about genres, because it's like you have this big umbrella and then you have sub umbrellas under the umbrella that encapsulate things further and make it even smaller and smaller and smaller. And it's just like, why? What's the point of that? Is it necessary to force everything to conform? So basically, in case you're confused about where this conversation went, part one of this video is all about how if you really try, you can find a book that you like in every genre. Part two of this video is talking about why do we even have genres in the first place? Because so many things fit into multiple genres that it is absolutely ridiculous that we force them to conform to a little box. So, I don't know the answers to these questions. I just really wanted to get my thoughts out on these topics, start to maybe get a conversation flowing, because it is a really interesting topic to me, and it's an interesting situation, because why? So anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this if you have any, or if you're just sitting there like, Katie, what the hell? I completely understand that too. Let it sink in for a little bit and come back and talk to me at any point if you want to. I'm always around in some form or another. But I think that's all I'm going to say for today. So who knows, I might do a follow-up to this at some point in the future, because as you guys know, I am being a little bit more laid back and chill with my channel life and stuff. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and you guys know the drill at this point. I have all of my social media links down below in the description. I have my Twitter, which is at A Sea of Tomes, which is the same as my handle here, and you guys can come over there and chat with me. I'm fairly active over there. And then I also have my Goodreads page linked down below as well. You guys can go over there and follow me, see what I'm reading, track my progress, and see my thoughts on things, because I am starting to write more reviews over there of the books that I'm reading, just because I don't have as much time to do this, but that for some reason is a little bit easier and less time consuming for some reason. I don't know, it doesn't make sense. But anyway, and then I also have my Ships and Fandoms page linked down below if you guys are interested and want to talk to me about any of that stuff at some point too. But other than that, I will catch you later at another video in the very near future. Bye!